Hello and welcome to On the Kerbs. I'm your host, Team Albers Daily. Joining me this week is Extreme Nitro RX and all-round rally commentator and racing driver Andrew Coley. We caught up recently to chat about how going electric has changed the face of motorsport, which drivers he thinks are the best in the world, who he'd love to take on head-to-head in cross cars, and much more. So, without any further ado, let's get straight into it, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi Andrew, thanks for being here today. First of all, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Timo. I'm all good. I am enjoying some time at home after a busy start to the motorsport season, which was later than normal for the third year in a row. Thanks to COVID. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to things going back to normal. But at the minute, it's either really crammed in or really spaced out, and yeah, it's been strange. So it's nice to be at home. I'm waiting to go back to Nitro RX and Extreme E. Which start at the end of September as we record this. We're in, where are we? August?
It's late August, yeah. Somehow already late August. I don't know how that's happened already, but there we go.
No, I know. Always find the start of the year goes really slowly, and then you get to the middle bit, boom, it's Christmas. So yeah, Merry Christmas, mate.
Apparently only a month until Extreme Eve, but it'll probably be, again, feeling like there'll be next week already at that point.
Yeah, it will fly by. It always flies by.
First question I'd like to ask you before, and I talked on here though, is what first got you interested in motorsport?
Probably Formula One. Watching Formula One with my dad, we used to sit and watch, the likes of Mansell and Co. on the BBC. That's the most obvious one because that was the one that had the most reach, as it still does now. So that was my first contact with motorsport, and I had autobiographies for the drivers and stuff that I'd read. And then Dad took us all, Mum, my two brothers, to Rallycross at Brands Hatch, which was the Rallycross Grand Prix, which was at the end of the season. It was the European Grand Prix, they used to call it. Will Gollop was there with the 6R4, packed around with the RS200. There were tons of RS200s and 6R4s. They were 10 a penny, like the whole field was made up of them. And it was absolutely brilliant. I can't remember the exact year. It's very early 90s. And I was kind of immediately hooked by these cars that appeared sideways. You never saw the side of the car; it just appeared sideways. You're looking at the front of an RS200 or a 6R4, which is always a good thing to be looking at. And it was wicked. I loved it. Then we expanded our horizons a bit more, and we went and watched Rally GB. And by then, I was fully into rallying. I was watching Top Gear Rally Report whenever it was on, or if Top Gear featured a rally, that would be my favourite bit of the show. So that's how I got into proper motorsport. Prior to that, from the age of 13, I'd raced radio-controlled cars, which I still love to this day. I've gone back to racing them 10 years ago. So when did probably the first time round, I probably only raced them for 6 or 7 years. I've been racing again for a decade since we started a club down here in Bexhill and Hastings, which is where I live. So yeah, radio-controlled cars were my first sort of entry into motorsport, and that's something which, when people ask me how to get into motorsport, I always say go and race radio-controlled cars because everything on them is exactly the same as on the big cars. Driving them is exactly the same, other than not sitting in them. At what lines you take, how you make a pass, consistency, mistakes, all of those things. It's all exactly the same, but it's like 1/100th of the cost because unfortunately motorsport is extremely expensive. So yeah, RC cars, television, watching motorsport, and then going and spectating at events was kind of my path into deciding that I wanted to take part.
You said about the RC cars as well. I mean, you just automatically think of the Blue Peter clip of Lewis Hamilton with his one. Yeah. So it's like if he can do it and get all the way up there, then definitely give it a go.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also, who else? Petter Solberg, he raced in Norway, he won the Tamiya Cup in Norway. Nicholas Hamilton, I know, as well as race radio-controlled cars recently. Lots and lots of those top drivers came up through it. Kyle LeDuc, he worked for Team Associated over in America. And I believe his son Reed is named after Reedy, Mike Reedy, who was one of the guys behind Reedy Motors, which is RC Cars again. It's all interlinked. Like so many people in the motorsport industry have experience of racing RC cars or did it on their way up. So yeah, that's my top tip. Go race radio-controlled cars, people.
So then you obviously then went and became a rally driver yourself, and you had a decent career there, then big gap, but then you went back again, and then you went into the commentating side of things. What would you say is the biggest challenge you have to face in either one or the other, or the biggest one overall for both?
The biggest challenge I had to face in motorsport was money, and that's always it's I'm a normal bloke, and my parents had normal jobs. They were both school teachers. I'm one of three brothers. They ran a bed and breakfast as well in the background. So to make ends meet, that's what everyone has to do, and especially at the minute when times are tight for everyone, I think. And if you don't have a lot of money and you don't have contacts in the motor industry, which obviously as with parents and school teachers I didn't, it's really, really hard to get the cash together or get the stuff together. If you run a garage, you can do all the work on your own car. You've got all the tools already. You've probably got a trailer. All of those things are there. We didn't. The first event I did, we bought this Vauxhall Nova rally car. All I knew was where the spark plugs were and the washer bottle on the battery. That's literally it. I knew where the carbs were, but I didn't know anything about them. Nothing. I'd never changed any brake pads. And then we went to the first event. We borrowed my dad's school minibus to tow the car. That's like a big 16-seat minibus, which with the trailer on the back of the rally car would only do 35 mile an hour uphill. And we went to the Abingdon Carnival stages at Abingdon Airfield. I say we had 2 spare tyres, a toolbox, and I'm in a crap toolbox with old tools in it and a jack. And that was it. That was it, literally. If it had rained, I don't even know what we would have done. We didn't have any wet tyres. But it was
time to learn if you can drive in those conditions, isn't it?
Yeah, I would have had to learn quickly, wouldn't I? It was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. It was a wonderful experience. We camped up there the night before, and I was still camping at events in 2008 when we did the National Gravel Rally Championship and were a lot more successful. But we still wanted to save money. I remember when we won Class A6 of Ankro 2008, ages ago, we won an award in Motorsport News called Shoestring Superheroes. And one of the other ones was actually Chris Langley, who's a rallycross driver who lives down here as well, who runs the RC Car Club with me. So it's, we were on a tight budget, so we used to camp, and it was bloody freezing. We came back one night. My parents got a motorhome, which was lovely, so they bought that to one event. But it froze while we were out doing the stages in Kielder when it was snowing. When we came back, it dumped all the water, so you couldn't put the heating on. It was bloody freezing. And I remember we had a fuel leak after scrutineering, and we had the 206 down in a car park on the edge of some lake near Kielder, like a huge lake. It might have been a famous one. I've forgotten his name. But, we're there with a hammer and a screwdriver, desperately trying to fix this car at 8 o'clock at night before the light failed, but hoping that we didn't do the thing up too tight, then it might break, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we were always a little bit shoestring superheroes, I suppose. So the biggest challenge for me was always money. And I would say that that's the biggest challenge now. Motorsport is trying really hard and doing very well, I think, at approaching the issue of diversity. Both with regard to race and sex, everything. Trying to get more people from different groups involved with the sport. But for me, the biggest barrier for all of those groups is still the money. If you don't have the money, there are probably the thing about, you grow up in a tower block and you go and play football with your mates in the park, you can make it to play for England and become a millionaire. But unfortunately, you'll never have the opportunity to go and drive a rally car because just that path isn't there unless you become a footballer first. And so that's the biggest issue. There's probably as many great rally drivers in the tower blocks of London as there are great footballers. And the same with women and whatever other groups you want to look at. There's as many brilliant drivers there. But they've got to be brilliant drivers and they've got to have access to the finance to make it happen. And I think that's motorsport's biggest challenge is the money, unfortunately.
Go and become a footballer first and then do it. That's the new strategy.
That's the one, mate. I suck at football, unfortunately, or I'd have tried it by now.
Extreme and Nitro RX have shown that it's possible to go electric and keep the racing really exciting. And if not better than before in some ways. How important is that, do you think? And do you think that WRC and other motorsport categories should be looking at that and taking it more seriously?
I think it's the big advantage Extreme E had is that it didn't exist before. So you've not taken something that the fans love. You've not gone, this is the Dakar Rally, and now you've all got electric, and all the fans go, vomit emojis in the comments, which is all you get with electric, because people are they're finding it hard to take up. Oh, the noise is a part of it, the smells are part of it. I get it, but it sounded different 20 years ago, and it's still going on. And in 20 years' time, you'll probably find kids going, God, those cars are really annoying and noisy. Now, we're never going to say that. Our generation, I'm always going to hark after something that makes loads of noise. But look, F1's always a good example. It went V6, everyone hated it. They still watch it from V8, which they hated but they were still watching from V10, which they hated because whatever was previous to it. Nobody likes change, but change is inevitable if you want the sport to remain professional. Now, we can mess about doing club level motorsport forever. That's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Knock yourselves out. But if you want to earn a living from the sport, and I mean drivers, engineers, dare I say it, commentators, whatever it is, the sport has to provide an income to make those things happen. Television costs hundreds of thousands of pounds just to produce from the event, which already costs hundreds of thousands of pounds, if not millions, to put on. And someone's got to pay for that. So the sponsors have got to be involved. And the sponsors now are not really interested in internal combustion. They're interested in electric. And so you're in this situation where it has to go electric. Now, it might be that governments in 10 years' time go, you know what, production of batteries isn't as environmentally friendly as we thought. There people always arguing about it online. Actually, we think hydrogen might be the way. All right, well, maybe we'll go hydrogen in 10 years. But at the minute, the governments are telling the manufacturers they want to go electric. The manufacturers, therefore, are only really interested in electric, and other brands want to be seen to be doing that. So that's kind of the issue with going electric generally. So I think the thing that Extreme E got right is that it didn't exist before, so there was no comparison. And I think the thing that Nitro has got right is, how can we make this such an awesome show that losing the sound isn't the end of the world? I've taken this away, but look at this big jump. And I think they're great at putting on a show. So I think that's the key to it, really, is you've got to keep people entertained. And you maybe got to find ways at the start where some of that drama of the noise is missing to make sure that there is something there, whether it's lights on a gantry, whether it's sound design in terms of music in the background, countdown clocks, all of those things which allow you to still get hype for the start of a race. Because before, you just let the anti-lag do the talking, and now I've got to do the talking, obviously, but you've got to build something in the background to do it. So with regard to other things going electric, I mean, if you look at WRC, they're still going to have very long distances, and they're doing the hybrid thing, which I think is a step in the right direction for them and the manufacturers. F1 obviously has no intention of going electric just yet, and of course we'll come up against Formula E when it does, and I'll bet you there'll be some interesting politics at the FIA there. So at the minute they're not going to, and the time's probably not right for them. But I think for the other series, the time probably is right. You can maybe steal a bit of a march if you can get the manufacturers behind you and do something truly exciting. Formula E's done very well for itself. I'm more of an Extreme E kind of a guy, but I've always come from that side of motorsport. I love circuit racing; it's brilliant, but it doesn't get me in the same way that off-road motorsport does.
That's the reason you're commentating on the Extreme E and the Nitro rather than the other things.
Yeah, I just, it's my background, isn't it? I know about off-road driving. I've never claimed to be Colin McRae. I'm not that good, but I have competed at national level, and I ran my own car, and I knew nothing about cars. So I had to learn. I had to learn how to take the diff out of a gearbox. I had to learn, when the brakes melted, how to rebuild the calipers. I didn't even know what a caliper was, let alone that you could rebuild it. We didn't know what the calipers were off. They were off a Volkswagen Golf GTI on the back of a Vauxhall Nova. So, you learn very quickly when you take it to a parts place in a motor factory, like, mate, what caliper is this? He's like, that looks like a Golf GTI. Let me get you a rebuild kit. And then I get the rebuild kit, and I'm like, where the bloody hell does that go? I learned, and I can't believe it, but I've been watching the sport for 30 odd years, and I've been involved for 25 years, either as a competitor, a fan, a commentator, in all my different roles. And yeah, I still love it. I still love it.
So segues perfectly into my next question then, because with all that experience in all these different sectors of motorsport, then who do you think is the best driver on track that you've either met or worked with, or in your case, even commentated on? Or is it too mean a question?
No, it's not too mean a question. It is a tricky one, because the thing is, you put them all in the same machinery and things. Obviously, look at Nitro and Extreme E is the perfect example of that. But there is one guy who's still always at the front, and that's Johan Kristoffersson. Is extremely impressive. But that's not to say, the thing about Extreme E is it's a shared thing in the car. You've got a male and a female driver, and I think he's had two very good female drivers. But also, Johan has done a brilliant job of communicating with them, and making them feel like they are as important in the team. But whatever it is that he does, like his relationship with Petter at Volkswagen, when they share the data, Petter's quick here, you're quick here, there's the perfect lap, do it. And he can do it. And that's the thing, is he can do it. I think when you look at all-rounders, you've got to look at the fact that he was able to win in Porsche. He won in Superstars. He's won in World Rallycross. He's won in Extreme E. You don't do that across so many different disciplines if you're not very good, which brings me on to Sebastian Loeb and Matthias Ekstrom, who I think you've got to have very high up on that list as well. DTM for Ekstrom, World Rallycross champion 2016. Killing it in the Dakar with zero experience. You don't do that unless you're very, very good. And both Kristoffersson and Ekstrom have that extra little bit where they're on the limit of what the car can do, but that only seems to take up, let's say, 80% of what they can do. So there's a 20%. If I drive a car on the limit, A, I'm nowhere near as fast as them, and B, 100% of my focus is on hanging on to this thing, probably because I'm not doing it. Well, I'm not doing it the right way. I'm not doing it the way they're doing it. And Sebastian Loeb's harder for me because there's always been a language barrier there. He's always been great when I've spoken to him. We had a brilliant conversation about his Peugeot 306 Maxi once, which was lovely. And he's a great bloke to have a chat with. But with the language barrier, it's not it's not quite the same as my relationship with Ekstrom and Kristoffersson. So, and I think it is fair to point out at this point, obviously, all three of those drivers are people who I have experience of working with. Yeah. So, I would love to see Lewis step outside F1 and come and do Nitro Rallycross. Go on, Rossi. Let's have a go. Let's have a.
So Vettel's not going to be in F1 anymore. Perfect type.
Yeah, okay, mate. Let's get on the phone to him. So where's Ricciardo going to be after yesterday's news? So I think probably these guys who operate at that level are capable of operating at that level. Look at Lewis when he rode the MotoGP bike. He's ridden. I mean, that blows my mind. And he got on that bike and properly rode it. I think that's incredibly impressive. Incredibly impressive. So I don't think I could fairly choose for you, the best in the world. And I just, you can't.
Top three, though, to be fair.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a good starting point. Yeah, if you wanted to look to people who are multidisciplinary and have succeeded in everything they've done, Loeb, Ekstrom, Kristoffersson, in my experience of people I've worked with, are the three that I would have towards the top of that list. But there are, Backer, the Hansons. I'd love to. You just never know. How good is a driver who's never quite had the best car? How good would somebody else have been in the Polo? Would Kristoffersson have had a harder time if, say, Hansen had been alongside him instead of Solberg? I suspect he might have done. But Petter, on the other hand, if you put him in tricky conditions, I bet on him over nearly anyone in the world on one lap. Because he just, and Liam Doran, incredible car control. This is what I mean. You go down the rabbit hole, and there's so many people who are so good. Petter, just a quick shout out for Petter. Don't forget, first person to win an FIA World Championship in 2 different disciplines. That's impressive. Yeah, that's impressive. So shout out Petter. You're on the list, mate.
So it kind of reminds you of the older drivers from the 50s and 60s when you could still happily jump from category to category without too much fuss, and then just you really saw who was properly good in like everything across the board. Then it was like, okay, you may be good in F1, but doesn't mean you're going to be good here. But then back then, you didn't have any reason you couldn't just jump into anything and do that. So these probably the closest version you could get to that.
Yeah, it's sad. Yeah, it's sad that we've lost that, isn't it? Really, where people can just go from discipline to discipline. I actually think Rallycross has brought back a little bit of that with the fact you don't have to be too much of a specialist to do it. So bring back multi-disciplines. Let's have a world championship where there's one F1 race, one rally, one rally.
Took the thought from my mind there.
Now we're talking, aren't we? Now we're talking, and you can only enter it if you're in the top. Well, actually, you have to enter it if you're in the top 3 in any one of those championships. So there we go. We've got 12 drivers, 3 from F1, 3 from Rally, 3 from Rallycross, and 3 from Rally Race. Done. Who's backing it? It's my idea. Copyright.
So we'll get onto that right after this. Following on the back of that, then, who do you think people should keep an eye on that's kind of coming up through the ranks of it now in kind of your area of motorsport in the off-road kind of world?
It depends what you define as coming up through the ranks, doesn't it? I think you've got to look at the likes of Conor Martell and Fraser McConnell in Nitro Rallycross as 2 drivers who've come up through RX2, ARX lights, GRC lights, ARX2, sorry, it was called, wasn't it? That car's been called so many different things. The thing is, I've seen the drivers come up, and that's mad again, but that's like how long I've been doing this for now, which freaks me out, is that I was in the paddock watching Oliver Solberg ride his bike around as a cheeky little chap, playing with his mates, literally playing like children play with his mates in the paddock back in 2013. He's now a factory rally driver in the World Rally Championship with Hyundai. So I've kind of seen a generation come through. Kevin Hansen was driving the junior rallycross cars, which had it was like a half-size car, and it had a snowmobile engine in it. That was Kenneth Hansen's concept. Then, of course, RX2 kind of took over as that support category, and the likes of Kevin Eriksson and Ollie Eriksson came up through it. So I've kind of seen it, and you forget that you're in it, that you're in that thing. Patrick O'Donovan has impressed me in the last couple of seasons with his performances in British Rallycross and then RX2E as well. And then you got the likes of Guillaume de Ridder. You know, how good would Guillaume be if he was in a proper car? Because he's one chance in the World Championship in that Clio, it wasn't a proper car. So, I'd like to see Cyril Raymond. Those drivers who just didn't quite get the chance at the highest level in supercar. How good would they be? So, there's quite a list there of people that I'd like to see try the next category up. It would always be interesting to get Casper Janssen, NRX Next champion last year. Let's stick him in a supercar or a Group E car and see how he gets on. But there's a learning curve always. You very rarely do you jump onto the next and just switch it on.
So I'm going to appeal to the driver side of you a bit now then, and part of Nitro RX is obviously the cross cars, which look like such stupendous amounts of fun whenever you see them go racing. If you could get in one of those and race any other 4 drivers in there, which 4 drivers would you want with you?
Oh, mate. Well, the trouble, I should choose 4 that I think I can keep up with, but that would be an insult to them, and I'd have to think very hard about it because there's some brilliant drivers. Just for your own ego, wouldn't you like to line up next to Kristoffersson, Ekstrom, Baccarat, and Hansen? You know, why not? Timmy, to be fair to Kevin, just because Timmy's won the World Championship. But I'll tell you, Kevin, yes, please. Sebastian Loeb, you know, it's such a long list. It really is. But you'd love to line up next to those guys, and I'd get destroyed by any of them. Absolutely any of them. Wipe the floor with me, I'm sure. But it would be interesting to try. Yeah, it would be interesting to try in the same car. I think that's the thing. What would be more interesting to me, rather than racing them, is to say, right, to the Hansons, let's say, can I come and race with you for a season? And I, have all the experience of Kenneth, Susan, Timmy, and Kevin, there as a whole, giving you that experience, or drive for Pinamaki's team. Yusi Pinamaki, another guy I've got so much respect for, and have that support and go through the process of testing and doing some laps. So I had the experience recently, very kindly. The Ericssons were brilliant to me and let me drive an RX2 car, a lights car around Hollius, which was a dream come true because that circuit's incredible. And, within 6 laps, I was feeling very confident, so much so that I got the jump wrong and broke a drive shaft. Fine. Sorry about the drive shaft to the Ericssons. But it was a brilliant experience. But it said to me straight away, okay, yeah, you're still all right at this, but now I want to look at the data. I think that's what's changed me really, is when I was competing, it was like, oh, how fast can I go? Why didn't we win this rally? Usually something had broken on the car. It was all a very budget affair, and I'd love to go and do something properly with these proper teams who look at the onboards and look at the data and look at the strategy and maximise everything, and then have the race against those people in those cars. I think I'd still get my ass kicked, but that's fine.
but by a smaller margin, maybe.
Yeah, to know how close you could get. I'm 46. I'm under no illusions, and I'm not, as I said earlier, I'm no Colin McRae. I'm all right, but I'd like to see as all right. I always felt as a motorsport instructor, you could take someone who was 7 out of 10, and you could get them to 9 out of 10 pretty quickly. 10 out of 10 is a different proposition, and that's what you need to be to compete with these guys.
I think 10 out of 10 might be the natural side of it, where they just have that, and there's not much you can do about that.
I think some people are born with it. I'd have to see people's early careers more, but someone like Colin McRae just had a gift for car control. Solberg and Doran, I think, have probably got that gift for car control as well. And I'm sure some people learn it, some people it's there straight away. But it's, it'd be nice to try, wouldn't it? Bring on the lottery ring.
Get that junior category for that championship from earlier, where it's just you've got to race kind of other drivers who maybe we'll give a little bit of head start. We'll see how well you do against them, and then we'll probably have it as the warm-up act, and then you can do it properly later.
I'm in.
Last question, which I always like to end with something completely unrelated to motorsport in any kind of way, shape, or form, and this one is always a favourite with people. So lucky you. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or a horse-sized duck?
100 duck-sized horses, or a horse-sized duck. 100 duck-sized horses.
You reckon you could
Like,
take them?
you know, I don't like the idea. The thing is, I love animals, so I really don't like the idea of having to fight them at all. But I just feel like
That was Loeb's excuse. You can't have the same one.
Who said that?
Loeb, he was like, I don't think it'd be fair to fight them because I quite like animals, but I'd quite like to meet the horse-sized duck.
Yeah, really, that's brilliant. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a horse-sized duck would be pretty scary. That's a big beak. That's my main. Basically, anything that's horse-sized is a bit scary. So, like, to be honest with you, a horse-sized horse is scary enough, but a horse-sized duck is pretty mental. So, I think I'd definitely fancy my chances against 100 smaller things. But I'll probably end up getting, well, I don't know, trampled to death by 100 duck-sized horses, wouldn't I? That'd be on my victory. He chose badly.
So not the end anyone was expecting for it.
No, exactly.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. I want to thank you very much for your time, and can't wait to see you back in action for Extreme and Nitro RX rather, just later in the year.
Yeah, thank you, Timo. Much appreciated, mate. Take care, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks again to Coley for coming onto the Kerbs with me, and I can't wait to see him back in action in Extreme and Nitro RX for the rest of their respective seasons. Join me again soon when I'll be chatting to another famous face from the world of motorsport. And in the meantime, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and check out the other interviews on the On the Kerbs YouTube channel. If you want to hear more from me, you can listen to me chat about F1, amongst other things, over on the Undercut podcast, and you can also hear me dissecting everything Nitro RX related, including chatting with special guests, over on the Nitro RX podcast. Both podcasts are available here on YouTube, as well as over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you like to listen. You can also follow me over on Instagram at t.albers.daily.onthekerbs and read my various motorsport articles over on Is It Fast and Paddock Sorority. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again next week for the next episode.